evening, everyone. Welcome to Lanterns and Luminaries. Tonight's festivities are a celebration of those who spark change and make history. I first want to thank our gold sponsors whose support helps make Lanterns and Luminaries possible. Meet Boston, Ann Bailey Berman and Roger Berman, and Alan Snyder. And I also want to thank State Senator Lydia Edwards for joining us this evening, and she'd like to share a few words with you all.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lydia Edwards, and I happen to be the state senator representing this area of the North End and all of downtown and East Boston and Winthrop and Revere. I have a very history-rich district, and much of tonight's celebration is to acknowledge the history that has been made with Commander Farrell. I want to personally say thank you. I happened to be the city councilor of Charlestown for some years, and I had at least 2 commanders of the USS Constitution in that time, both great men. But you broke the mold. She did. I want to tell you why. In many cases, one, there's something that happens when you see a woman in a position that she traditionally isn't supposed to be. I happen to be an Air Force brat. So I was very accustomed to seeing my mother in combat boots and coming home, as she was a master sergeant for 23 years in the United States Air Force. So there's a special pride that us military brats have, but especially when you see women who are in positions of power in the military. They think about so many different things, and their leadership style is, I think, a little bit more inclusive. But what she represented to so many of the little girls in Charlestown and to many of the cadets, I'm sure, at the Naval Academy, you are one as well, all of those different things, what she represents is what can be. I had the personal honor of being inspired by her, and I personally asked her to pin me when I commissioned into the United States Army National Guard. I became a JAG officer, and I could think of no one else who could stand and pin me besides Commander Farrell. You inspire me as a woman. You inspire me as a soldier, as a patriot. Your leadership and what you represent is incredible. I want to also just acknowledge that so much of what she represents is history breaking. And while our founding fathers may not have seen us in these particular positions, commander of the USS Constitution, or the senator from the area, from this particular area, I won't begrudge their limited vision when it comes to who could have done it. But I will credit their expansive vision of a pathway of what could be more a democratic process. I will give them that credit. So with that, job well done. Incredible at glass breaking. And I want to say thank you. Be well.
Thank you so much, Senator Edwards, for those inspiring words to kick us off this evening. As we continue the program, I would also like to give some recognition to our partners at the Freedom Trail Foundation and National Parks of Boston, both of whom play important roles in the ongoing preservation of this special place. And a special thanks to Reverend Dr. Matthew Cadwell, the Congregation of Old North, and the Episcopal Diocese of Massachusetts for their valued collaboration and allowing us the privilege of sharing the stories of this most sacred space. This year marks my 10th year on the Old North Illuminated Board and my 3rd and final year as chair. I came to Old North as a Miami transplant at the start of my career and as someone desperate to figure out how I was ever gonna make my life up north feel permanent and like home. In Old North, I found my values reflected back at me. Active citizenship, public service, community. And the more I learned about its history, the deeper I fell in love with the Old North Church, with Boston, with my new home. This place will always be an incredible example to me of the magic that can happen when we open our eyes and hearts to what is possible for ourselves and the collective good.
I'm a little taller, so. Throughout tonight's program, you're going to hear a lot about the importance of seeing yourself reflected in our nation's history, and about the power of places like Old North Church and USS Constitution to help us as Americans find points of unity. But this work can be challenging when, for so long, history textbooks have told us that it's just the stories of a few select founding fathers that really matter. And Longfellow himself fell into this trap when he penned his poem, Paul Revere's Ride. Now, as you all can imagine, I have heard this poem and read this poem many, many times. And yet, when I heard tonight's poem readers, Jasmine Bonner and Jess Meyer, rehearsing, it was as though I was hearing it for the first time, because their use of rhythm and movement and sound really changed the experience. And what struck me is that in this tale of a lone hero, you can find the presence of others who contributed to the lantern signal, the midnight ride, the battles at Lexington and Concord, if you just listen to the poem a little more closely. First, we're introduced to Revere's friend, who was given the signal to hang the lanterns. And then we meet the country folk, who opened their doors in the middle of the night and received the call to get up and to arm. And with a little foreshadowing, we meet he who will be the first to fall at North Bridge, and the brave farmers who in a few hours are going to face one of the most powerful military forces in the world and return ball for ball. And it's very fitting to me that we're having this performance tonight when we're celebrating the work of Old North Illuminated's education team to bring new research and new voices to light. And I'm very excited for you to hear it, and just as soon as Maddie introduces our poem readers, you will get the chance.
Jess Meyer is a multi-hyphenate, non-binary theater artist and ASL interpreter who is passionate about the power of storytelling and their work with site-specific theater company Plays in Place. Beyond Boston, Jess's theatrical work has been seen from Richmond, Virginia to Edinburgh, Scotland. They are the lead producer for the Plays in Place production Revolution's Edge, a play returning to this very room for its remounted run this summer, featuring a pinnacle moment in the history of Old North Church. Jasmine Bonner, or Jazz as she is professionally known, is a co-producer with Plays in Place and arts manager in the greater Boston area. She is a lifelong theater lover, a storyteller, and she claims to be very bad at writing bios, so she kept this short. Her professional credits include the Public Theater in Lewiston, Maine, Cleveland Playhouse in Cleveland, Ohio, the American Repertory Theater, Huntington Theater Company, Fresh Ink Theater Company, Stage Source, Plays in Place, and Adam Theater. She is a proud board member of Dunamis and Lyric Stage Company of Boston.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend,
"If the British march by land or by sea from town tonight, hang a lantern aloft the belfry arch of the Old North Church as a signal light. One if by land,
and two if by sea.
and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm."
Then he said,
"Good night."
And with muffled oar, silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide as her moorings lay the Somerset, British man of war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar. and with a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide.
Meanwhile, his friend through alley and street wanders and watches with eager ears. And in this silence that around him, he hears the muster of men at the barrack doors,
Over
the
here!
sounds of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of grenadiers marching down their boats onto the shore. Then he climbed to the tower of the Old North Church,
by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread, to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade, to the trembling ladder and the highest steep. When he paused to listen and look down, a moment on the roofs of the town, with the moonlight flowing over all.
Beneath in the churchyard lay the dead, in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still that he could hear, like a sentinel's tread, the watchful night wind as it went, creeping along from tent to tent, and seeming to whisper, "All is well." A moment only he feels the spell.
Of the place and the hour and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead. For suddenly, all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats.
Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now he gazed at the landscape far and near, and then, impetuous, stamped his feet out the earth, turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the Old North Church,
as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral, somber and still, and lo, as he looks at the belfry's height, a glimmer,
and then a gleam of light.
He springs to his saddle, and the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes, till full on his sight, a second lamp in the belfry burns.
A hurry of hooves in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing a spark, struck out by a steed flying fearless and fleet.
That was all.
And yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of the nation was riding that night. The spark struck out by that steed in his flight kindled the land into a flame with its heat.
He has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him, tranquil, broad, and deep, is the mystic, meeting the ocean's tides, and beneath its alders that skirt its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of the steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock.
When he crossed the bridge into Medford town, he heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog. He felt the damp of the river fog that rises as the sun goes down. It was 1 by the village clock.
When he galloped into Lexington, he saw the gilded weather clock swim in the moonlight as he passed. And the meeting house windows, blank and bare, gaze at him with spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon. It was 2 by the village clock.
When he came to the bridge in Concord town, he heard the bleating of the flock and the twitter of the birds among the trees. He felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown. And one was safe and asleep in his bed. Who at the bridge would be the first to fall?
Who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball? You know the rest in the books that you've read, how the British regulars fired and fled.
How the farmers gave them ball for ball behind each fence and farmyard wall. How they chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again.
Under the trees at the turn of the road, only stopping to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere.
And so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear.
A voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore.
For born on this night wind of the past,
through all our history to the last,
in the hour of darkness and peril and need,
the people will waken and listen to hear
the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed
and the midnight message of Paul Revere.
And now, by way of introduction, we thought we would sing a song of introduction, a smash hit from 1737. It's got the easiest chorus in the English language, and you look like a singing crowd. It's simply, how do you do, how do you do, how do you do again? That's all there is to it. Try it once. How do you do, how do you do, how do you do again? One misty, moisty morning when cloudy was the weather, I met with an old man. He was clothed all in leather. He was clothed all in leather, with a cap beneath his chin, singing, how do you do, and how do you do, and how do you do again? I went a little farther, and then I met a maid. Oh, are you going a milking? No, the milking's all she said. I began to compliment, and she began to sing, singing, how do you do, and how do you do, and how do you do again? She said her name was Dolly, clothed in a gown of grey. I, being somewhat jolly, persuaded her to stay. In many a kind of races, I stroked her double chin, singing, how do you do, and how do you do, and how do you do again? I said that we should marry be, and she should be my bride, and long we should not tarry, and 20 things besides. I'd plow and sow and reap and mow, while she could sit and spin, singing, how do you do, and how do you do, how do you do again? Oh, will you spin for us, Mr. Toddy? Soon consented, all parties were agreed. Her portion 30 shillings, we married where we ski. And Will the piper, he did play while others danced and sing, singing, how do you do, and how do you do, and how do you do again? Singing, how do you do, and how do you do, and how do you do again? Last night, it's how do you do, and how do you do, and how do you do again?
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Matthews, and I'm the Director of Education at Old North Illuminated. Before I begin, I would like to thank Tripp and Toddy for their performances tonight. This is fun. Three years ago, as we were preparing to rebuild this organization and reopen our doors, we articulated a vision that describes the world in which we want to live, a future in which everyone will see their stories, struggles, and hopes reflected in places of prominence and our shared American history. Some of you may be thinking that this vision is incredibly ambitious. It is. There are days when it feels a long, long way off, but there are also days when our team is working with students or talking with our visitors when that future feels close. On those days, we can see that as Americans, our histories, even though they are individual and unique, are woven together, parallel at times and intersecting at others, creating a fabric that will connect our futures. As we find more and more points of unity, as that fabric of our stories and histories grows more complex and stronger, the promise inherent in this nation's founding seems ever closer. So how do we translate this aspiration into our visitor experience and our classroom programming? We approach history in ways that are inclusive, engaging, and accessible. In many ways, inclusion is the easiest. At ONI, inclusive history is history that is honest, objective, and makes room for multiple stories and perspectives. What that means is we rely on research conducted by scholars to recover overlooked narratives and bring together facts from multiple sources that illuminate entirely new aspects of Old North's history. Then, we bring that research and those stories to our visitors. We will welcome over 200,000 visitors this year, and will reach an additional 10,000 or more through classroom programming. Now, engagement comes when history is relevant to the visitor or student. So inclusive, comprehensive narratives increase the likelihood that visitors will see some aspect of themselves reflected here, inspiring an empathetic connection to the past in all its messiness and wonder. And finally, accessibility, which is inextricable from inclusion and engagement. Over the last year, we have taken multiple steps to reimagine the visitor experience and make that experience easier and more comfortable. Let me give you some examples. Some of you are sitting in pews with panels from our new exhibit. And after this program, you'll all have an opportunity to check the exhibit out. This exhibit follows best practices in accessible design. Note the colors, the contrast, the font, the way the information is presented in hierarchy. There are questions to engage the imagination. But, as they say, that is not all. As part of the exhibit's accessibility, large print binders are available, and there are also audio files that describe the panels and read the panel text for those who have low to no vision. Our handheld audio guide, which again you'll have a chance to try, utilizes a storytelling, research-based approach to expand upon what we share in the exhibit. These are wonderful for those who learn best by listening. And we also have the script available for those who process better by reading. So I want to close where we started, with our vision. A future where everyone sees their stories, struggles, and hopes reflected in places like Old North. Inclusiveness, engagement, and accessibility are fundamental steps in achieving that vision. Whatever your history, we invite you to find aspects of your story here at Old North. And now, I would like to introduce Anne Grimes-Rand. Anne is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the USS Constitution Museum, a position she has held since 2010. Anne's career at the museum spans almost 4 decades and represents an extraordinary mastery of every aspect of museum education and management. She joined the museum in 1986 as a research associate and was swiftly promoted to assistant curator, and then to sole curator, and then to deputy director, and then to executive vice president before assuming her current role. In her time at the museum, Anne developed and led the creation of programming and exhibits that set the bar for intergenerational fun and learning. Under her leadership, the museum has grown, receiving accolades and awards within the field. Truly, there could be no better person to introduce our honoree than Anne Grimes-Rand.
Good evening. It is my great pleasure to introduce the third Lantern Award honoree, Commander B.J. Farrell, the 77th Commanding Officer of USS Constitution. She assumed command of USS Constitution on January 21st, 2022, becoming the first female captain in the ship's 225-year history. Known today as Old Ironsides, the ship is the oldest commissioned warship in the U.S. Navy. In this unique role, Commander Farrell is strengthening the legacy of America's ship of state by sharing its undefeated history and telling the Navy's story. Commander Farrell oversees an 80-person crew, most of whom are on their first assignment in the Navy. As commanding officer, Commander Farrell ensures that her team learns how sailors lived and worked in 1812 and how to be successful in the Navy today. USS Constitution is not just a historic ship. She is an active duty Navy ship, and she is a ship that is still making history today. Commander Farrell will turn the ship over to the 78th Commander on June 21st after a 2.5-year tour. She will then return to her alma mater, the United States Naval Academy, as battalion officer, serving as a role model for today's cadets. Throughout her career, Commander Farrell has exemplified the values reflected in Old North's famous signal lanterns: courage, leadership, teamwork, and active citizenship. Her awards include 3 Meritorious Service Medals, 4 Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medals, and 3 Meritorious Unit Commendation Medals. I have had the privilege of working with BJ for the last 2 years, and I know that she is a dynamic leader, creative and thoughtful, responsible and generous. Just this winter, during February vacation week, when she took time off to spend with her children, we found her in civilian clothes back in the USS Constitution Museum for our Lego shipyard with her kids building some incredible Lego creations. She is a tremendous role model for girls today, a terrific mom, and a passionate advocate of STEM. In her new role, in which she will train the next generation of U.S. Navy sailors, she will set a high bar and continue to build an incredible legacy. Please welcome my friend, Commander B.J. Farrell.
Good evening. Thank you, Anne, so much for the gracious introduction, and thank you to Old North Illuminated for the honor of receiving the Third Lantern Award this year. I will start by saying I am not from Massachusetts. I am from another Commonwealth, Kentucky, and my husband is from Peabody, which I know how to say correctly. On top of that, we have a 16-year-old dog named Fenway, so I figure that puts me at least on a level playing field. As the 77th Commanding Officer of USS Constitution, I often have to remind people that so much of the history you experience while in Boston revolves around the Revolutionary War. There are countless stories of service, strength, active citizenship, and perseverance that started as ideas and ended up as actions that shaped our country in her early years. While USS Constitution was not built until several years after the Revolutionary War, she is still connected to so many people and places from that time. For example, her name was selected by George Washington. President John Adams was at the first attempt of launching the ship, to which it took 3 attempts to actually get her into the water, in case you did not know that. But there's some other historical connections even closer to where we sit tonight. Captain Samuel Nicholson, the first commanding officer of USS Constitution, was a member of the congregation of Old North Church. In fact, he lies in the crypt below us. I was honored to be invited to pay my respects with the rest of my leadership team when the crypts were undergoing their recent restoration project. It was a memorable day that connected me even more to the ship and her legacy. There is another name sitting here tonight that has close connections to the ship. Mr. Revere, pleasure to see you as always. While many people know Paul Revere for his famous midnight ride and being a silversmith, he was also a coppersmith, provided both the original ship's bell for Constitution and the copper that would later cover the bottom of the ship. Because of the copper that was placed on the hull to prevent woodworms and marine growth from deteriorating the wood at a much faster rate, we still have 10 to 15% of the ship that is original, back to 1795 when the keel was laid. The history of the ship, and even that of the modern United States Navy, go back 1 year prior to the keel even being laid. Following the Revolutionary War, we actually disestablished the United States Navy. As ships were expensive, we didn't know how to pay for them or to man them. That was fine until we started to send merchants to travel parts of the world for trade, which we needed to do to grow our economy and to further establish ourselves as an influential country on an international stage. However, those merchants began to get taken captive and held for ransom by the Barbary corsairs, pirates backed by the northern governments of the coast of Africa. And on top of that, the British, who had more ships than anyone else at this point in history, were impressing sailors into service, essentially stopping any ship they could find, taking sailors, and forcibly placing them into service. Because of these actions, George Washington and Congress decided we did in fact need a navy. And with that, they passed the Naval Armament Act of 1794 to reestablish the United States Navy by building 6 frigates. USS Constitution was the third of the 6 frigates to be built. She was built here in Boston, not too far from where we sit tonight. Edmund Hart Shipyard, today the Coast Guard base, was the site of Constitution's construction and third successful attempt at a launch. USS Constitution went on to fight in the Quasi-War with France, the Barbary Wars, and most notably, the War of 1812. She remains undefeated and never boarded during battle. With a record of 33-0, she helped establish the legacy of the United States Navy and the United States' status as a maritime power in history. While much of what I have mentioned to this point ties to history, which we often only think about as being several generations removed, I also often reflect on the connections to modern day. First and foremost, the ship is an enduring symbol of the strength, dedication, and perseverance of our sailors, not just from our past, but from our present. Her history is still being written by those that set foot on her decks to visit and to those who serve as her crew today. The other connection I realized one day when giving a tour of the ship is that she was built for freedom of the seas, open shipping lanes, anti-piracy, missions the United States Navy is still actively doing around the world today. The technology in ships may have changed, but the missions haven't. In fact, they have grown. Another thing I always find amazing about USS Constitution, if you remember, I mentioned the Naval Armament Act of 1794 that authorized 6 frigates to be constructed. I'm always in awe of the 6 frigates. The only one left with us today is USS Constitution, named by George Washington for the document that governs our country and the document which all who have served, are serving, or will serve take an oath to support and defend. My journey to serving in the Navy and to Constitution actually started when I was a 10-year-old girl channel surfing, which I have to explain to kids today because all they know are streaming services, when I found a Naval Academy graduation on TV. I stopped, watched the whole ceremony, and as soon as it was done, went downstairs, found my parents, and told them I knew where I wanted to go to school. I found myself in awe of the hundreds of midshipmen so excited about a common purpose, excited to go serve their country, and to be part of something bigger than themselves. My parents thought I was crazy, rightfully so, because what 10-year-old knows what they want to do with their life? But they helped me figure out how to make that dream a reality. They found mentors and positive influences that wanted me to succeed. They helped me navigate the process of applying to the Naval Academy and have been with me every step of the way. One summer vacation, when I had just finished my sophomore year of high school, we took a road trip. We took a road trip to visit Annapolis, Maryland, so I could see the Naval Academy. Once I saw the campus, I knew even more that was the future I wanted. We departed Annapolis, and our next stop on that same vacation brought us to a city some of you may have heard of, named Boston. We had a full itinerary, and on one hot summer day, we walked the Freedom Trail. We stopped here in Old North Church and continued on to the Charlestown Navy Yard, where, as luck would have it, my dad snapped a photo of 16-year-old me wearing a Naval Academy hat, standing next to USS Constitution. And yes, my mother has since made me recreate that photo in this uniform. I could never have imagined I would end up back in Boston, standing here tonight, giving remarks in such an iconic location that means so much to the country, or commanding the oldest commissioned warship afloat in the world, America's ship of state, representing the United States Navy as a whole, or over 70,000 women that we have serving on active duty today, and over 30 women commanding your United States Navy warships around the world. The privilege of commanding the ship has given me a different perspective on how history all ties into each other, how some days it seems so far away, yet is very much still applicable to the world we're living in. A ship that is 226 years old is still very much a living symbol of our maritime heritage and purpose, and is sometimes even able to still make history herself. As we gather here tonight to reflect on history and the famous midnight ride of Paul Revere, I challenge you to find how history relates to your life today and find a way to write your own history. We all have a story to tell and an ability to impact those around us. Define the legacy that you want to be remembered for. You never know what 10-year-old may be watching and be inspired. Thank you again so much for the honor of being the third Lantern Award recipient this year. It has been the honor and privilege of my life to serve in the United States Navy and as the 77th captain of USS Constitution. Huzzah!
Master and Commander.
2 centuries after the lantern signal lit the path towards revolution, on April 18, 1975, President Gerald Ford began the nation's bicentennial celebration by lighting the third lantern here at Old North Church as a signal to guide our country with hope and fortitude into our third century. The Third Lantern Award honors those who are working to fulfill the promise reflected in those lanterns, a future that delivers on the promise of liberty and justice for all. Commander Farrell, you are a remarkable leader, demonstrating courage, empathy, tenacity, and active citizenship throughout your nearly 2 decades of service with the Navy. As the first woman to command USS Constitution, your service is an inspiration to women serving in leadership roles in every sector. And your efforts to connect the past and the present speak to everyone who visits the ship. It is our honor to present you with a third lantern.
violent strife all sailors undergo. And they don't care, the sailors on, how hard the wind will blow. 'Cause they're homeward bound on the Arctic ground, on a good ship taut and free. Now they're sailing home again to their friends in old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, the boys, rolling down to old Maui. They're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, the boys, rolling down to old Maui. Homeward bound, Arctic ground, sailing down to old Maui. Well, now we sail with a northerly gale, and through the ice, the wind and the rain. Coconut palms and island lands we'll never see again, until 6 hellish months pass on the cold Kamchatka Sea. When we're rolling home again, friends in old Maui, rolling home to old Maui, boys, rolling home to old Maui. Homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to old Maui. And now we sail with a northerly gale to our native home. Sailing's done, the men must sprung, we ain't got far to roam. Our stunsail booms are carried aloft. That's the extra yard on the mainmast to carry us sail. Why am I telling you? Go to the Constitution Museum, they'll tell you all about it. Our stunsail booms are carried aloft, preparing for that sound of a running gale running after us. Thank God we're homeward bound, rolling down to old Maui, the boys, rolling down to old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to old Maui. And we'll laugh and chat as we think of that, friends, old Maui.
What does it mean to see yourself and your story reflected in our history?
The gallery at Old North Church connects me to those people of faith whose voices and stories are rarely heard. One of my friends talks about trying to hear the sound of silence, and that's what Old North seems to be doing.
But the beauty of the Old North Church of today is that they're really committed to examining all of the people who were up here and finding their names and their stories, like the Humphreys and the Cranky families.
In their lifetime, they weren't deemed as important or as noticed as others. Their history still resonates and it still tells a story. And it reminds me that it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, your voice and your history matters.
The history of Old North is Black history. It's my history. It's our history.
Old North Church is famous for 1 minute of history, which might be that night that Longfellow's poem's all about, and that's it. But no, that isn't it. There's 300 years in excess of that one night, before, during, and after it.
I'm a teacher here in Boston, and I've taken my students to the Old North Church every year. This time, I learned about Matilda Bibby, who spent a lifetime serving others. Matilda was born into a family of immigrants, as was I. But the biggest connection between myself and Matilda is that we both have the same passion for teaching and mentoring young people.
One of my favorite figures in the story of Old North is the Reverend Stephen Lewis, our third rector. He was a British Army chaplain who was arrested and captured in the American Revolution, and after a time decided to switch sides and then was able to become the rector of this church. I'm inspired by his story in his ability to see to the future, understand his new context, and to lead a congregation that was always changing and growing and trying to find its way in a complicated world.
Shubael Bell's story really resonated with me because he was the deputy sheriff of Suffolk County and took that as an opportunity to improve conditions for his prisoners, which really just goes to show it doesn't matter what job you're in or what you think the job description might be. You always have an opportunity to give back to the community to improve the lives of others.
Shubael Bell founded the Sunday school here at Old North Church, which served hundreds of neighborhood children. I see myself as young Shubael Bell because I have raised money for organizations that help people who don't have food and clothes.
When I visited the Old North Church, the panel about the Queen just jumped out at me, brought back a lot of memories. We seen all the commotion, all the motorcycles, the police officers, and all of a sudden the limousines pulled up and we seen the Queen get out of the, it was shocking to see the Queen.
As a North End native, I connected very much with the panels talking about the continuity of community because it, talks about throughout the 19th century, the time that my family members were first arriving in this country, all the things people really needed. They needed education. Old North had a Sunday school. They needed clothing. Old North had the Fragment Society.
I feel connected to Old North when I think about Reverend William Levington. It was then and continues to be critically necessary that our actions and values are aligned with our financial resources. This is the work of legacy building. And Reverend Levington reminds us that it is our shared responsibility not only to each other, but to generations not yet born.
Good evening. Very good. I'm Rick Musial, and I'm a member of the Old North Illuminated Board of Directors. Tonight, I too feel a connection to the Reverend William Levington, the first Black minister to preach here at Old North. In the July 1833 issue of the abolitionist newspaper, The Liberator, a notice announced that Reverend Levington would speak here at Old North later that year. Levington was the rector of the St. James First African Protestant Episcopal Church, a church he founded in 1824 as one of the first Black Episcopal churches in the South. His visit to Old North was part of a speaking tour to raise money to support the church and its school for Black children in Baltimore during a time when Maryland prohibited Black children from attending public schools. We believe that his fundraising efforts were successful. And as I stand here this evening to ask this very lovely, overwhelmingly generous audience for financial support, we hope that history will repeat itself. I joined the Old North Illuminated Board of Directors in 2022, a time when many arts and culture institutions were struggling to rebound from pandemic losses. And I must tell you what this small yet amazingly mighty team has accomplished is nothing short of incredible. You've heard the highlights: new research, a new exhibit, 200,000 visitors in 2023, curricula distributed across 40 states this past school year. But just take a moment to look around. Being able to sit in these 300-year-old pews or see the steeple where the signal lanterns hung is an incredible privilege. This is a National Historic Landmark, a designation for places that illustrate the heritage of our nation and represent outstanding aspects of American history and culture. Old North Church, an historic site, must be preserved and researched and interpreted and enjoyed, and that's where we come in. Tonight, we are trying to raise $135,000 to support Old North Luminary, and we are just about $12,000 shy from that goal. So let me tell you how you can help and how your gift can do this work. Boston was home to a powerful, racially diverse community of abolitionists in the year leading up to the Civil War. How did Old North's community help advance that movement? Your gift can help us find out how. With the millions of bricks that make up this beautiful church and surrounding campus, water is not our friend. Currently, we have water that seeps into this beautiful building. It is not glamorous, but it's a challenge. We need your help to keep Mother Nature outside. Slavery and abolition, religion and economics, immigration and settlement patterns. Old North Church illuminates shifts and arcs in American history that speak to all of us. You can help us reach students in all 50 states. Now, we can do this in 2 different ways to make your gift tonight. On the back of your program, everyone reach for your program, you'll find a QR code. You can scan that code with your phone's camera and make a gift online. If you prefer to donate offline, you'll see remittance envelopes in your pews. You can drop a check in there or fill in your credit card information. You can do both. We'll wait. And hand it to a member of our team on the way out. I'm so very confident tonight that we can reach our goal of $135,000 that I'm only going to ask once. So let's take a minute to make our gifts now, and your reward will be another great performance from Tripp and Toddy. Thank you.
As you sign away, let's play something. I think they need more time. Keep signing. One more time. I think she's about to add a 0 to the number. We've heard the commander. We've talked about the Constitution. It's your turn now to pull some ropes.
Some lines, sir.
Some lines, sir. I think, oh goodness, you can see I'm not a sailing type. Some lines. You never say ropes, did you? Sorry.
Life on board ship was very, very difficult, as you may know. And not every commander at sea was as gracious and kind as our commander here tonight, especially on the merchant vessels. But the captain's word was law, and you could not speak out or say anything ill about your commanding officer or your captain, but you could sing about them. When confronted, you could simply say, "Oh, that was my last cruise." So this one's got a very easy chorus. It simply goes like this. With a big bow wow, tow row row, foldy-roldy-ride-o day. Try it once with me. With a big bow wow, tow row row, foldy-roldy-ride-o day.
And if you can't sing, pull the lines.
From Boston Harbor we set sail. Wind was blowing up the devil of a gale, with our ringtail set over Mountain Peak, and a dolphin striker plowing up the deep. With a big bow wow, tow row row, foldy-roldy-ride-o day. Bow wow, tow row row, foldy-roldy-ride-o day. Our skipper comes up from down below. He looks aloft He looks low, and he looks aloft, saying,
Coil those rounds there, fore and aft, with a big pow-wow, pow-row-row. Oh, the right-o-day, big pow-wow, pow-row-row. Oh, the right-o-day.
Then it's off to his cabin he quickly crawls. Unto his steward he loudly bawls, saying, bring me a glass that'll make me cough, for it's better weather here than it is up aloft, with a big bow-wow, pow-row-row. Oh, the right-o-day, with a big bow-wow, pow-row-row. Oh, the right-o-day. Now there's one thing we sailors crave, that he should find a watery grave, which shove him down in the deep dark hole, where the fish will take his body and the devil take his soul. With a big bow-wow, pow-row-row, for the right-o-day, with a big bow-wow, pow-row-row, for the right-o-day.
That's a really tough act to follow. So who wants to have Trip and Toddy back next year? So I want to thank everyone for joining us here tonight, for your partnership, for your generosity. I hope that the program has left you eager to explore the campus, and we're about to head outside. But first, there are so many people I would want to thank for making tonight special. Hopefully there are slides up where you can see their names. But I want to give special thanks to our co-chairs, Barbara Russell and Maddie Rodriguez. And I also want to thank our friends at M&M Elite Events and HSP Sound Production, because you really don't think about event planners and the AV crew unless something goes wrong. And so I want to thank them for being invisible tonight. So in just a moment, Trip and Toddy are going to lead us up the aisle and out of the church. And when you exit the church, the best way to see the lantern signals is to head across the street, go about halfway up toward Copp's Hill until you can turn around and see the top window in the steeple. And when everyone's out of the church, the lanterns will light up, and then Revere and Dawes will go by on their horses. And then you'll all come back onto the campus and join us for a reception. So when you come in the campus, show them your wristband, and you'll come in the gate. And then there is a map in your program to help you get around. But in the tent next to the church, there will be some food and an open bar. And then in the ticket booth next to the gift shop, if you get a little chilly, there's some hot chocolate and some hot cider. For folks who haven't had a chance to explore the exhibit that's tucked in the pews, you can come back inside, but unfortunately without your food and beverage, but you'll go back out and have more. You can check out the audio guides. And for anyone who hasn't been in the crypt yet, which is underneath us, you'll want to take the Freedom Trail, follow it between the church and the gift shop, down the stairs, and then right around the corner to your left, you'll be able to enter the crypt, which was just restored last year, so it's a great time to visit. Last but not least, historian and reenactor Adam Hodges LeClaire is going to be telling us about the life of a sailor, and he will be demonstrating 19th century tattooing. So if any of you want to leave tonight with a very unique souvenir, go find Adam. However, if that's not your thing, he will show you how to do it on an orange. And I've heard there will be some banana scrimshaw as well. So with that, I want to welcome two special guests to this. Oh, they're already here. Welcome. So Paul Revere is most known, I think, as a silversmith and as a messenger. But he was also an artist, and his illustrations really helped move the patriot cause forward. And so for the annual lighting of the lanterns and our recession, he'll be joined by Peter Levesque, who I don't know if he would call himself this, but I think he is also an artist. Because Peter is a new and first-time author, which is incredible, right? The man wrote a book. So in 2022, his book, To If by Sea, which is an international spy thriller, came out, inspired by his time in Hong Kong and his love of US history. And, sometimes history can be pretty heavy, I will admit that. But Peter's book reminds us that history can also be exciting and entertaining, and absolutely something that you would want to read while you're at the beach or by the pool this summer. And so with that, I will say, Paul, take it away.